For 100 years the desert planet of Caris had known no rain. Its skies were pale and empty, and its ground was split with long cracks that never healed. Once, long ago, water had flowed across the land in wide rivers. Cities had grown near them and many species had lived in peace. All of that ended when an alien empire built a massive dam in the planet's core. The machine was meant to control storms and power entire star systems. Instead it failed. The dam drained the water from the world and trapped something far older beneath the surface. Deep below the sand and stone, the dragon Ishkur lay bound in metal and light. His massive body was wrapped in energy chains that burned day and night. Pipes were pushed into his scales, pulling heat and power from his heart. The machine used his strength to keep the planet from breaking apart. Without him, the world would fall into pieces. So the galaxy made a choice long ago. They decided Ishkur would stay where he was. They called him a monster. Records said the dragon once ruled the skies with fire. They said he destroyed fleets and burned cities. They said he could never be trusted. So when the dam failed and trapped him, the council marked it as a sad but necessary result. No one returned to free him. No one asked if the stories were true. For 100 years, Ishkur drank no water. His great wings were folded tight against his body. His eyes stayed closed most of the time, not in sleep but in pain. Each day felt longer than the last. He no longer counted time. He only waited. Above the surface, the planet became a repair site. Automated systems kept the dam running at low power. No one lived there anymore. It was listed as a dead world, useful only for energy extraction. That was why James was sent. James was a human engineer, quiet and careful. He was not famous. He did not command fleets or carry weapons of power. He fixed broken things. When the council reviewed the dam's latest failure reports, they saw strange numbers they did not understand. Humans were known for patience and problem-solving, so they hired one. James arrived alone on a small ship. As he stepped onto the desert surface, heat rolled over him like a heavy blanket. The air tasted dry and old. He looked around and saw nothing but sand, broken towers, and the remains of machines half buried by time. This place shouldn't still be running, James said softly to himself. He set up his tools and began scanning the ground. The readings confused him. The power output was far too steady for a damaged system. Something was balancing it. Something alive. James followed the signal to a deep access shaft. The old lift still worked, groaning as it carried him down into the planet. Lights flickered on as he descended. The deeper he went, the warmer it became. His scanner beeped faster and faster. When the lift stopped, James stepped into a vast chamber. Pipes and cables stretched in every direction. At the center, bound by glowing restraints, lay the dragon. James froze. Ishkur was larger than any creature James had ever seen. His scales were dark and dull, cracked from dryness. His chest rose and fell slowly. Heat shimmered around him, but it felt weak, like a fire near its end. James raised his scanner with shaking hands. The readings hit him hard. Life signs were low. Danger levels were low. Pain levels were high. This isn't right, James whispered. The dragon's eye opened. It was not full of rage. It was tired. Deeply tired. For a long moment, neither moved. The machine hummed around them, uncaring. You are small, Ishkur said, his voice rough and slow. Another keeper? James swallowed. I'm an engineer, he said. I'm here to fix the dam. Ishkur gave a weak, humorless sound. Then you will leave soon. They always do. James looked at the chains, the pipes, the dry scales. They told me you were dangerous, he said. They said you had to stay trapped. Ishkur's eye closed for a moment. They say many things, he replied. It is easier than listening. James stepped closer, careful and slow. His scanner showed what words could not. The dragon was not attacking the system. He was holding it together. His body was part of the dam now. If he died, the planet would break. You're not a battery, James said quietly. You're a prisoner. Ishkur did not answer. His breathing slowed. James sat down on the cold metal floor. He stayed there for a long time, watching the readings. The numbers told a simple story. The dragon was dying. Not today. Not tomorrow. But soon. James thought of the council records. Of the warnings. Of the fear. Then he thought of the cracked desert above and the silent sky. I don't know if I can free you, James said at last. But I can't pretend I didn't see this. Ishkur's eye opened again just a little. Then you are different, he said. That is enough. Above them, the machine continued to drain the last strength from a dragon who had not tasted water in 100 years. And for the first time in that long silence, someone had noticed. Somewhere in the dark, hope stirred. The warning came less than a day later. A council message flashed across James's console, sharp and cold. It ordered him to stop all work and prepare to leave the planet at once. The message listed old laws, danger levels, and sealed records. It ended with a simple command: do not interfere with the dragon. James read it twice. Then he turned back to his screens. Soldier ships arrived in orbit soon after. They did not land. They hovered like silent eyes in the sky. Another message followed, this one spoken by an official voice. You have seen what you were not meant to see, the voice said. The dragon is classified as a controlled threat. Your task is the dam only. Finish what you can and leave. James took a slow breath. The dam is the problem, he replied. It's killing the thing keeping this planet together. There was a pause. Then the voice hardened. That is not your concern. James ended the call. He returned to the deep chamber below the surface. Ishkur lay where he had been, bound and silent. The machine hummed around him, pulling power, pulling heat, pulling life. James worked for hours. He studied the old alien systems line by line. The technology was ancient, built by a species that no longer existed. But the logic was clear. The dragon was not just trapped by the dam. He was the dam. Ishkur's body produced energy that fed into the planet's core. His presence held the cracked world together. Remove him suddenly and the planet would tear itself apart. Keep draining him and the same thing would happen when he finally failed. James clenched his jaw. They built a cage and called it balance, he muttered. He sent a private signal to his crew. Emily arrived first. She was a systems specialist, sharp-eyed and calm. When she saw Ishkur, she stopped speaking. Her face changed as the readings appeared on her display. He's dying, she said quietly. Yes, James replied. And if he dies, the planet goes with him. Michael arrived next. He was older, practical and careful with rules. He frowned at the glowing restraints and the pipes. This is why they told us to stay away, Michael said. They didn't want anyone asking questions. The three of them worked together in silence for a while. Emily traced energy flows. Michael checked structural data. James watched Ishkur's life signs dip lower little by little. There's no emergency water system, Emily said at last. Nothing meant to sustain a living being. Just enough to keep power flowing. Michael shook his head. They never planned to keep him alive forever. James looked at Ishkur. The dragon's eye opened slowly when James stepped closer. They are angry, Ishkur said, sensing the tension above. You should leave. They will not forgive defiance. James met the dragon's gaze. I'm not here to fight them, he said. I'm here to stop a collapse. Ishkur let out a low breath. For 100 years no one stayed. Emily swallowed. He's fully aware, she whispered. They knew that too. Another warning came from orbit. Soldiers demanded James return to his ship. They threatened to cut power to the site. Michael looked at James. If they shut it down wrong, everything fails, he said. Including the planet. James nodded. Which means they won't, he said. Not yet. They worked faster. James discovered a partial solution buried deep in the system code. The dam once had a release cycle meant to rotate power sources and prevent overload. It had never been used. Activating it could reduce the drain on Ishkur without removing him. But it needs water, Emily said. Real water, not recycled coolant. Michael frowned. There's none left on the surface. James looked at the readings again. Deep underground reserves still existed, locked away by the dam itself. Old safety locks prevented access. They chose control over life, James said. We don't have to. Emily nodded slowly. If we reroute carefully, we can let some water flow back. Not enough to destabilize the core. And enough for him? Michael asked. James glanced at Ishkur. Enough to give him a choice. The dragon listened quietly. You would risk your kind for me, Ishkur said. James shook his head. I'm risking rules, he replied. Not people. Ishkur's eye softened. That matters. Above them, the soldier ships remained silent. The council argued. Records were reviewed. Fear fought with caution. Below, three humans worked with steady hands and tired eyes. They did not see a monster. They saw a system built on suffering, slowly breaking. Emily leaned back from her console. If we do nothing, he dies, she said. And they'll call it an accident. Michael crossed his arms. If we act, they'll call it treason. James looked at both of them. Or they'll call it proof, he said. The machine continued its endless pull. Ishkur's breathing stayed slow but steady. For the first time in 100 years, A plan existed that did not end in silence. The first alarm sounded across the station just as James activated the old control line. Red lights filled the chamber. The machine's deep hum shifted into a sharp warning tone that echoed through the metal walls. Energy levels changed fast, sending signals far beyond the planet. In orbit, sensors flared. Across the sector, monitors lit up with the same message. Unauthorized system change detected. Council offices came alive with panic. David stood in the main council chamber, staring at the rising alerts. He was a senior observer, trained to remain calm, but his hands tightened into fists. He recognized the dam's signature at once. "They've started the repairs," he said. Jessica stood beside him, reading the same data. She was younger, but her voice was steady. "They didn't wait for approval." "They won't get it," another council member snapped. "Shut it down now." Jessica turned to them. "If we cut the system suddenly, the planet destabilizes," she said. "You approved that risk assessment a century ago." "That was different," the counselor replied. "We contained a threat." David spoke again. "No. We trapped a solution and called it a threat." The chamber fell silent. Back on the planet, James barely noticed the alarms. He watched the energy flow carefully as he adjusted the ancient controls. Emily and Michael worked beside him, calling out numbers and pressure changes. "Core strain holding steady," Emily said. "Dragon output dropping," Michael added. "That's good. It means the drain is easing." Ishkur stirred. The dragon's massive chest rose and fell as a new sound filled the chamber. A low, distant rush echoed through old tunnels, like a forgotten river waking up. Water. James felt his throat tighten. He had not expected it to sound so alive. Ishkur opened both eyes this time. They reflected the soft blue light spreading through the pipes. "I remember that sound," Ishkur said slowly. James stepped closer. "We're releasing a small amount," he said. "Just enough to stabilize the system." Ishkur's voice was weak but clear. "You should know something," he said, "before you decide to go further." James waited. "I was never a king," Ishkur continued. "I never wished to rule the skies or burn worlds. I guarded the water long before your kind reached the stars. Others feared that power. They called it rule." James listened without interrupting. "When the dam was built," Ishkur said, "they promised balance. They said I would rest. Instead they bound me and drained me. For 100 years I endured because the world would die without me." Emily wiped her eyes without looking away from her screen. Ishkur took a slow breath. "I no longer wish to fight," he said. "I no longer wish to be feared. I only wish to drink and rest." James nodded once. "Then that's what we'll give you." He rerouted the final control. Deep underground, ancient locks released with a heavy sound. Stone channels cracked open. Water, held prisoner for a century, surged forward. It flowed through the planet's veins and into the chamber. The first stream touched Ishkur's scales. The dragon trembled. It was not pain. It was relief. Ishkur lowered his massive head, letting the water wash over him. Steam rose gently as heat met life. His breathing grew deeper, stronger. Across the planet, sensors showed impossible changes. The core stabilized. The surface temperature dropped. Cracks in the desert began to close. In orbit, the soldier ships pulled back slightly. Confusion spread. Back in the council chamber, alarms softened into steady tones. Jessica stared at the new data. "The planet is stabilizing," she said quietly. David exhaled. "Because they were right." A counselor slammed a hand on the table. "Stop it now," they demanded. "Before the dragon recovers fully." Jessica met their gaze. "He already is," she said. "And he hasn't attacked anything." Silence followed. Below the surface, Ishkur lifted his head. His eyes were clearer now, brighter. "I will not forget this," he said to James. "Not the water. Not the choice." James stepped back, giving the dragon space. "Just rest," he said. "That's enough." The alarms faded completely. The machine's harsh pull softened into balance. For the first time in 100 years, water flowed freely beneath the desert world. And for the first time, the galaxy was forced to listen not to fire but to the quiet sound of mercy at work. Water reached the surface slowly at first. Thin streams pushed through cracks in the sand, darkening the dry ground. Steam rose into the pale sky as the heat met something it had not felt in 100 years. Then the streams grew wider. Old riverbeds filled again, tracing paths the land still remembered. The planet breathed. James stood on a high ridge with the others and watched it happen. Emily smiled in quiet disbelief. Michael let out a long breath he felt he had been holding for days. Below them the ground trembled. Ushkur rose from the deep chamber, breaking through the surface in a wide open valley. Stone and sand slid away from his massive form, but there was no fire, no roar of anger. When his wings unfolded, they moved slowly, stiff from long stillness. Water flowed over his scales, washing away dust and pain. The dragon lifted his head and simply stood there. Relief filled the air, heavy and calm. Sensors across the planet showed the truth at once. Core pressure dropped to safe levels. Energy stabilized. Weather systems began to form naturally. The world was no longer held together by force but by balance. John and Ashley worked from the orbital station, their hands moving fast over their consoles. Data poured in from every direction. "This changes everything," Ashley said, staring at the numbers. John nodded. "The records are wrong. All of them." They compiled the results carefully. Not emotions, not opinions, just facts. The planet was stable. The dragon was calm. Life signs were rising instead of falling. John opened a secure channel to the council. "Transmission ready," he said. The data reached the council chamber in a silent wave. David and Jessica stood together as the results appeared on the central display. Charts showed water flow returning. Images showed green beginning to spread across the desert. Energy graphs flattened into clean, steady lines. Jessica spoke first. "The dragon is no longer being drained," she said. "And the planet is safer than it has been in a century." A council member whispered, "Impossible." David shook his head. "Uncomfortable," he corrected. "Not impossible." On the surface, Ushkur moved toward the highest point of land. He did not fly. He walked, heavy steps pressing into wet soil. Wherever he passed, the ground cooled and settled. James approached carefully. "How do you feel?" he asked. Ushkur lowered his head, letting water drip from his horns. "Whole," he said. For the first time. A distant storm formed on the horizon. Clouds gathered slowly, not forced by machines, but born of heat and water meeting again. Rain began to fall far away. Ushkur watched it in silence. "I will stay," the dragon said at last. "This world needs time to heal." James nodded. "And the council?" he asked. Ushkur's eyes softened. "They will see," he said. "Or they will learn." Back in orbit, John and Ashley received a final confirmation. The council had halted all shutdown orders. Soldier ships were told to stand down. Ashley leaned back in her chair. "Mercy worked," she said softly. John allowed himself a small smile. "It always does," he replied. "It just takes longer." The dragon took position near the planet's core access point, not as a prisoner but as a guardian. His presence strengthened the land without draining him. When the ground shifted, he adjusted. When storms grew too strong, he calmed them with heat and patience. The galaxy watched closely. No fleets burned. No cities fell. No threats were made. Instead, life returned. Green spread across the sand. Water pooled in valleys. Small creatures emerged from hiding. The world began to live again, not under fear but under watchful care. James and his crew prepared to leave. Before they did, Ushkur spoke once more. "You gave me a choice," he said. "I will repay it by keeping this world safe." James placed a hand over his heart. "That's all we ever asked," he said. As the human ship lifted into the sky, Ushkur stood below, framed by clouds and new rain. Not a weapon. Not a monster. A guardian standing watch over a world that finally remembered what water felt like. The update happened without ceremony. Daniel sat in a quiet records room far from the main council chamber. The walls were plain. The lights were low. Screens floated in front of him, filled with old warnings and red symbols. Beside him, Lauren reviewed the final data one last time. The file title read, Ushkur, Threat Class Extreme. Daniel paused before changing it. 100 years, he said softly. That's how long this stayed wrong. Lauren nodded. Fear lasts longer than facts, she replied. But not forever. Daniel removed the red marks. He replaced them with clear language, simple and honest. Status, Protector. Notes, planetary stability maintained by consent, not force. Lauren added the final line. Recommendation, no containment. No weapons. Observe only. They sealed the record and sent it into the council archive. No announcement followed. No speech. The galaxy changed quietly, the way important things often do. On the restored world below, James stood at the edge of the landing platform. The air felt cooler now. Moist. He could smell rain on stone. Emily and Michael finished loading the last of the equipment onto the ship. No medals, Michael said lightly. No headlines. Emily smiled. I'm fine with that. James looked out across the land. Rivers reflected the sky. Green patches spread farther each day. In the distance, Ashkur stood still, watching clouds move slowly overhead. That's enough for me, James said. Ashkur approached the ship but kept a respectful distance. His wings were folded. His posture was calm. You leave quietly, the dragon said. James nodded. That's how we came, he replied. Ashkur lowered his head. You listened when others would not, he said. You did not ask what you could take. Only what should be done. James felt a tightness in his chest. Just keep the world safe, he said. Ashkur's eyes reflected the sky. I will, he promised. The ship lifted off gently, leaving no scorch marks, no scars. As it climbed into orbit, Ashkur watched until it vanished among the clouds. Across the sector the story began to spread. It did not start as a legend. It moved through reports, logs, and quiet conversations between crews. Engineers spoke of a dragon who was never meant to be chained. Pilots spoke of a world that healed once fear was removed. Council aides whispered about humans who ignored orders, not to rule but to repair. The story changed as it traveled, but one part stayed the same. Humans did not conquer the dragon. They listened. Daniel and Lauren watched the effects ripple outward. Other old records were questioned. Other threats were reviewed. Not all were dragons. Some were planets. Some were species. Some were ideas locked away too long. Lauren leaned back from her screen. This will cause trouble, she said. Daniel nodded. It already has, he replied. But it's the right kind. On the restored world, Ashkur stood at the heart of the land. Storms came and went gently. Rivers stayed within their banks. Life returned in small, careful steps. The dragon did not rule. He watched. He rested when he could. He guarded when he must. The galaxy did not gain a weapon that day. It gained something rarer. Proof that strength could come from patience. That power could exist without chains. That sometimes the bravest act was not to strike, but to stay and listen. And somewhere among the stars, the humans moved on to the next broken thing, carrying no banners, only quiet resolve.